still unknown here. Just 3 practices into fall camp. So unfortunate that I can't get to, I don't have answers for all of them yet, but I'll try my best. And we'll also talk a little bit about, in those questions, what's happening in the Big Ten, as it's gone from Washington and Oregon joining to them not joining to staying in the Pac-12 to all these different things to finally them coming into the Big Ten, being invited into the Big Ten, and that likely going to be the case. And so there's some questions thrown in there as well. Before we get to that, let's start with practice number 3 of spring. It was with shoulder pads on, so there was a little bit more contact. If you want some video, obviously UW has their video up, but posted some video as well from what I captured from practice. You can find that up on our YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, we appreciate it. I promised I wasn't going to keep pushing the YouTube even after once we got to 1,000 subscribers. We got to 1,000 subscribers this morning, so I'm going to stop pushing it, but there is plenty of good stuff up there. You can hear from Luke Fickell, who talked to us after practice, and you can also see the video from the first 30 minutes of practice. We can only shoot for 30 minutes, so we don't get any of the good stuff, all the good stuff that UW then puts out later on with some of the plays. And I guarantee you, one of the plays that they're going to put up is this catch by Bryson Green. We talked about him the first 2 days, really the first day, how he stood out, how impressive he was, his physicalness, his catching, how he caught the ball, and just his look, and just how he belonged almost right from the minute. And that's exactly what we expected coming from Oklahoma State, but we didn't see it in the spring. So we had to wait for this fall camp to see what was going to happen. And he showed today exactly what they've been waiting for. I mean, this was a play of the camp so far, easily play of the day, probably play of the camp. A little shot down the field, ball was a little underthrown, so it kind of turned into a 50-50 ball. He turned around, he had 2 guys on him. He had a cornerback, he had a safety coming. It was Austin Brown, it was Jonas Taclona, and he just went up over both of them and jumped up, grabbed the ball, held on to it, took a shot, went down, and was 35 plus yards. It was exactly the type of play that if you turn on his Oklahoma State film, you saw. It was as impressive of a catch as I've seen in a fall camp. And again, you're going to probably see it and be like, yeah, whatever. But in the moment, it was exactly the type of play that Wisconsin needs from Bryson Green. It's why you brought him in. And I think especially that's going to be the case once you get down into the red zone. This one was not in the red zone, but it was still a hell of a catch. And easily, in my mind right now, the play of camp so far offensively. Outside of that, it was a little bit of a tough day for the offense, specifically Braden Locke. Braden Locke did not have a good day, threw 3 interceptions. And it was honestly the cornerbacks really playing aggressively, that they were able to jump a couple out routes. And again, I don't know that those are passes that they're going to be able to play that way normally. It's possible that it was because of the type of period that they were running, that they knew those type of balls were going to be coming, but they jumped him. Nazir Forkeran had one. Forkeran, had an interception. So did Owen Arnett, who took it back for a touchdown. So there were Preston Zachman had an interception on a deep ball from Braden Locke that was extremely underthrown. So it was not a good day for Braden Locke at all. Tanner Mordecai also threw an interception. It was more of a miscommunication, it looked like, because Jim Radike was outside with the corner and he threw it back inside, and Kamoi Latu was right there for the interception. So a little bit of a step back. For the most part, though, I didn't think Tanner Mordecai had a bad day. That interception obviously certainly stood out. And it wasn't like Braden Locke didn't have some good passes. He did. There was he hit Jack Pugh on a double move, which counteracts some of that the aggressiveness from the corners, certainly. And he was able to hit him down the field for a big gain. He hit a whole shot to Quincy Burrows between 2 defenders down the left sideline. I'm talking about Braden Locke. So there were some good plays from Braden, but there were probably too many negatives. And after his it might have been his second or third interception, he got pulled. And they put in Miles Burkett in his place. So for the next 6 plays. So it wasn't his best day. It wasn't his best day at all. So that's tough. That's tough because we know how good he was in the spring. We all know that. We talked about it. He took over and was really consistent throughout. He was probably the better quarterback in the spring game too, though I don't know that necessarily took a lot from what we saw from Tanner Mordecai that day. But it's been a little bit of a tough start for him, and we'll see if he's able to fix that and get back on track. But the defense is ahead of the offense, and I think certainly that's to be expected. There were some nice plays from the offense. Tanner Mordecai found Skylar Bell for a long touchdown during a pressure period. He beat the blitz, and then it was just one-on-one between Skylar Bell and a safety, and Skylar Bell is going to take that more often than not. There was a really nice ball over the middle from Tanner Mordecai to Timray Dike for a first down in one of the periods. But the defense continues to put some pressure on the quarterbacks and on the offense and making it very, very difficult. And again, that's not a big surprise. I mean, you could look back at every single camp since 2013. That has been the case where the defense has made things difficult for the offense. And there's been some really talented offensive players in this last decade. And they've made it difficult on them a bunch. So that's not a huge surprise. A couple of guys on defense that stood out in addition to some of the interceptions. I thought Rodis Johnson continues to stand out, had a sack. Jordan Turner had a would-be sack. I continually think that when the pads come on, or maybe I shouldn't say when the pads come on, when games come, these safeties, if this was the 1990s or even the early 2000s, they are a physical headhunting type of group. Like, they belong to play. They believe they should be playing in the era of Jay Valai, because these guys, I mean, every time you get into a hole, when it's Braylon Allen coming through and you've got Kamoi Latu coming up to stuff it, it is a situation where there is contact, and it's shoulder pads and helmets right now. It's not supposed to be anything big, and Kamoi Latu is putting it to them. So they have some guys that love to hit. Austin Brown's another one of them. They've got some guys that are going to come up and lay the wood to you, and I certainly think that that's going to be good for them, assuming they can keep it legal, obviously. But got some headhunters back there. Back in the day, you would call them headhunters. They're obviously not anymore. So you hit the head, you're out of the game. But some really, really good players on the back end for them. So defensively, formation-wise, we saw a lot of different things happening these first 3 days. Day one, a lot of 4-2-5. Their nickel that we've seen so much, two down linemen, you got the two outside linebackers, you got the two inside linebackers, and then the 5 DBs. Saw that day one a bunch. Day two, we got to see that dollar package that we saw a bunch in the spring, where it's essentially 6 DBs, and you have two down linemen, you have an outside linebacker essentially playing as another defensive lineman lined up over the tackle / tight end, and then you've got two inside linebackers, and then a small linebacker, Hunter Wohler, coming up and playing towards the front half opposite of the other outside linebacker. He's essentially an outside linebacker, but he can drop into coverage. He can play the run. He can blitz. There's a lot of things you can do with that spot. And then you have the other 5 DBs. So that is something that we saw on day two. Day three brought base 3-4. We saw the 3 down linemen, the 4 linebackers, and the 4 DBs. And that was something that we haven't necessarily seen a ton of. We didn't see a ton of in spring. I imagine tomorrow we may see a little 3-3-5, which is what obviously they brought from Cincinnati. But again, as we have mentioned throughout this week, I think multiple is the word to use with this defense. There's no doubt about that. There's going to be a multiple defense showing different things, different times to mess with offenses, and it could be week to week. One week you may be playing a certain style against a Washington State type of offense, and then you're going to be playing maybe a different type of offense, and you're going to be throwing something different defensively. And they have the bodies to do it. They have the knowledge to do it because they've played a whole bunch of different things. And I think they have the coaching staff's trust that they're going to be able to do it too. A lot of guys with a lot of experience, even if they don't necessarily have the playmakers that we've seen in past years with a Keanu Benton or a Nick Herbig, they do have a ton of experience and guys that I think are going to step up and make a bunch of plays. So that is what I have for practice today. We'll get another practice on Saturday. They practice Sunday, and then they practice Monday night before coming back to Madison. So we've got 3 more practices. Jesse will be back with me on Saturday, break down that practice. Also, then be back on Tuesday, probably to break down Sunday and Monday as the Badgers then come back to Madison. All right, let's get into some of these questions that I got on Twitter. There's a lot of them, but we'll start with a question that I kind of got into yesterday, and is about Phil Longo. It's Deonta asks, Phil Longo has had success everywhere he's coached. Why are there thoughts that it won't work here? He turned around a triple option team in an offseason. I don't know that, and again, I don't know if this question was directed at me because of what I said yesterday, where I think maybe things are not going to hit the ground running as quickly as everybody is hoping. I do think it's going to work eventually. Like I have a ton of trust in Phil Longo and what he's been able to do at other places, whether it was turning a triple option team into the top ranked passing team in the conference the following year, or what he was able to do at Ole Miss, or what he was able to do at North Carolina. He's had success wherever he's gone running this type of scheme, and I don't think Wisconsin's any different. But I do think that doing it at the Big Ten level, as opposed to what he did at Sam Houston State, is a little bit different. It's a little bit different. And the type of athletes that were playing at North Carolina and the type of players that they had there, a little bit different than what Wisconsin has too. If he's going to get a Sam Howell type performance out of Tanner Mordecai, well, then maybe there's something then maybe I can get on board with it, being right away, and they're going to be able to put points up on anybody. But again, I think it's going to work. I just think it's going to take a little bit. I just think it's going to take more than day 10 of fall camp, which is what Jesse was kind of saying, that they'll be in a better spot 10 days into it. Of course, they're going to be in a better spot. Are they going to be at their end spot? Are they going to be hitting it on all cylinders on day 10 of fall camp? Absolutely not. So I think it may just take a few weeks into the season. I think the Washington State game is a huge, huge challenge for them. I think it's a huge, not a barrier, but a huge test mark for them to see where they are in as an offense, because Washington State's defense had some success in getting after them last year in the passing game, and really caused havoc for Graham Mertz. Now, again, this is a much different offense than the one that they faced last year. So, but I do think that's going to be a good gauge of where the offense is when they go out to Pullman in what will essentially be a night game, 4:30 kick out there against a team that wants to prove that last year was not a fluke, and that they are that they can play on the same level as some Big Ten teams. And, especially now that half their conference is leaving, including a couple teams coming, or 4 teams coming to the Big Ten. So I think there's going to be some overtones to that, but I do believe in Phil Longo. I do. It's just a matter of whether it's going to hit the ground running from the outset. And I'm a little skeptical that it is going to do that. Let's get to Matthew's question. He says, is pace of play similar to spring ball? Is everything out of shotgun in this offense? If so, is the jet sweep dead? The pace of play similar to spring ball. It's been a little bit slower in team periods than it was in the spring. I think maybe we'll get it turned up here as we get a little bit further along, which is what's happened in spring as well. And in terms of everything out of the shotgun, absolutely everything out of the shotgun. I have not seen a snap under center yet in 3 days. Now, that's not saying it's not going to happen. We saw it in the spring, a couple plays. It didn't go overly well, but yeah, I don't expect to see a ton of under the quarterback under the center. It's just not what Phil Long was about. Does that mean the jet sweep is dead? I think the jet sweep, it's not that you can't put guys in motion, right? Like, I think there's still going to be jet sweep motion. I think it's just going to look a little bit different. And, getting the ball into the guy's hand that's coming across, it may be a pass. It may be a pass backwards. There are some things that they've been working on that I won't delve into, but they're going to get the ball in the hands of some guys that can make some plays in different ways. And maybe some of them may look similar to what the jet sweep was. Eli says, I know everyone is focused on the offense becoming more modern, and rightfully so, but I'm more curious on how the defense looks. It's a new philosophy and scheme under Tressel. How have the guys adjusted? Will our defense still be high tier? Based on early returns, yes, they're going to be still very, very good. I thought it was interesting in talking to Muma Jongmeta last week. I know everyone was saying the right things around the time that this whole switch was made, but I think they had some convincing to do. I think Mike Tressel and Luke Fickell and some of the assistants had some convincing to do among the returning guys because of what had worked prior. Wisconsin has been one of the best since 2013, since the 3-4 scheme came with Dave Aranda and Gary Anderson, something you can thank him for. Since then, and obviously they've changed it up a little bit, and it's a lot of 4-2-5. I get that it's not necessarily the base defense all the time, but since 2013, they've been one of the best defenses in the country. I think if you look over time, and obviously Georgia's been amazing these last few years, but Alabama's been off the charts, and I would say Alabama has the best defense since 2013, but you can't put it together a top 5 worth of defenses over the last 10 years that doesn't include Wisconsin in terms of consistent defensive play. So they've been that good for that long, and I don't think that's going to stop. And they had to do a little bit convincing, and Mumajong Menace said that I was hesitant at first to accept what they were trying to do, but after looking into it, after reading about it, after watching film with it, I feel a lot more comfortable and feel that this is something that we're going to be able to do and do well. And it's early, but they've done it, and they've done it well. And I'm really anxious to see exactly how they attack it, as I was talking about earlier, the ways that they can attack offenses. It's going to be, I think, one of the more intriguing storylines throughout the entire year is how multiple can they actually be. One of the guys that I think a lot of people are curious about, Jamel Howard. He was a big recruiting win for Wisconsin out of the Chicago area. Greg Scruggs wanted him badly. The defensive line coach wanted him badly. He got him. So Butterfield says, can Jamel Howard be the impact player Wisconsin needs in the interior? And I know there were a couple other people that asked about Jamel Howard as well and how he's looking. He is all of 320 pounds. I can promise you that. He has not gotten a ton of reps in team drills with the other guys, but this is, I caution, by saying that, I caution making any judgments based on the first 3 days, because I think me and Jesse have talked about it. Keanu Benton, his first few days was not impressive. He was just, wasn't good. It wasn't good his first few days, and he ended up starting his freshman year. So take it for what it's worth. But Jamel Howard hasn't got a ton of reps. He is a big boy. He is powerful. We got to see that in some one-on-ones. They put him against another freshman in one-on-ones in front of the entire team in a pass rushing drill at the start of camp on Friday, and he won his match, and people loved it. So I think they have a really good player there. Unfortunately, he went down with an injury late in practice. I don't know exactly his status. It looked like a right foot injury. He had a shoe off, and so that he was being looked at. So I don't know exactly how bad that injury is. It's unfortunate because he is that big body that they don't necessarily have. I mean, they've moved Gio Paez out to defensive end. They don't necessarily have a ton of nose tackles. When you say this guy's going to play nose tackle, that he's got the nose tackle body. Jamel Howard has the nose tackle body. And so we'll see exactly if that injury is going to keep him out significant time or no time at all. But early returns are he's physical presence. We'll see if it actually translates onto the football field, because it reminds me, and it's not fair at all. So like I talk about Keanu Benton. I also talk about Jeremy Patterson, who came out of Georgia, was a guy that they beat some teams for and really liked, but it just never happened. And some of it was he just couldn't get his weight under control, and some of it was, football wasn't necessarily the most important thing to him. And a great kid, but it wasn't always football first. And so I don't know that to be the case with Jamel Howard at all. So I'm not again, that's past. But these are the type of bodies that come in and you're like, can they be this guy? And Jamel Howard has the body type to be a very good defensive, Jamel Howard has the body type to be a very good nose tackle. We'll see if it ends up being anything. The Dairy Raid. Have you seen how the running backs are being utilized in the passing game, especially if and when two backs are in the backfield. We have seen that. They have been a very big part of the offense so far. And again, Jesse and I talked about this yesterday. A lot of short passes, a lot of passes out to the flat, getting the running backs the ball in their hands and letting them do some work. I think a little bit an extension of the pass of the run game, getting them out there and letting some of the wide receivers block in front of them. I did see something today where they had two backs in there, and then they had Will Pauling in motion, and one of the running backs kind of act as a lead blocker when you throw it to Will Pauling, and I think it was Braylon Allen out blocking. So they're going to use those guys in various ways, and we've kind of seen that so far. But a lot of it is just a lot of swing passes and a lot of just getting them out in space and letting them try and be athletes, which, again, we know that that's kind of what Phil Longo wants to do. Adam asks, how is the overall energy of the players better than prior years in early fall camp? Unfortunately, the only thing that we don't get to talk, we haven't talked to the players. We haven't talked to players these 3 days. We don't get to talk to them for a little bit more down in Platteville. From the outside, from just that 30 minutes where I get to walk around the field and take pictures and take video, it's a high energy practice. It's exactly like it was in the spring. And that's exactly what I would expect it to be, because that's what this staff is about. That's what Luke Fickell's about. So yeah, I think it's been high energy, and the players have kind of held up their end of it to this point. But again, it's early and we haven't talked to them, so I don't feel overly comfortable doing that. Follow-up question for fun. Adam says, first offensive play against Buffalo, run or pass? I'm going run because I feel like Phil Longo's be like, I told you I was going to run the ball. I told you I was going to run the ball. I'm going to run the ball. But I could also see him wanting to show everybody how good the passing game is too. If I had to take a bet, I mean, it's honestly 50-50, in my opinion. I'm going to say run. I'm going to say Braylon Allen run up the middle. Very, very unique and flashy from Phil Longo to start things. Badger fan asks, what player, if lost to injury, would trash their season? He thinks it's Jake Renfro. I don't think it's Jake Renfro. I think Jake Renfro is good. I'm a Tanner Bortolini guy. I think Tanner can play whatever position it is along the offensive line, and if it's center, I think he'll be just fine. I think they'll be just fine. Jake is battling right now. I know they said he was going to be limited, but he's gone through some team drills with the second team. Was a little slow to get up today after a play, and was limping around. He's not completely healthy yet at this point, but he went back in. So he's fighting through it. He's trying to fight through it, and we'll see exactly how that plays out down the line. But right now, it's Tanner Bortolini is the center, and Jake Renfro has not gotten any first-team reps at center, and a lot of the second-team reps have gone to Joe Huber. Renfro's gotten a little bit, but I know he is limited, but he is getting some time in full team drills, and it's not with the first team yet. So I think they like Tanner Bortolini. I think they feel comfortable if he was their center, and I certainly would feel comfortable about it as well. So it would not be Jake Renfro. It's hard not to pick Tanner Mordecai just because he's the quarterback of an offense that is quarterback driven. And what I've seen from Braden Locke to this point doesn't give you a ton of confidence. Braden Locke in fall camp does not give you a ton of confidence if Tanner Mordecai were to go down, that he'd be able to step in and there wouldn't be any drop off. So I think Tanner Mordecai, as even as he's been, not so high, not so low, he's still gives them their best chance to win. I would probably say him. Though, I mean, you could, I guess you could throw the running backs in there just because there's not a ton of depth after them, but I feel like Phil Long would find different ways to get the ball to his playmakers if that were the case. If they were without Braylon or if they were without Ches, he'd be able to figure out a different way to move the ball. But Tanner Mordecai, his experience, everything like that, he'd be my guy. Mike asked, do you anticipate teams to load the box initially against this Badger offense until they prove that they can throw the ball around? Honestly, I kind of do. Show me, and I'll respect it. Until then, no. But again, go back and talk about Phil Longo's history and what he's done at other schools. you kind of got to respect it. But I think because it's Wisconsin, because it's still a team that's going to want us to run the ball with Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi and be physical and get downhill on guys, even though they are going to do it in different ways. I still think teams are probably going to force Wisconsin into showing that they can move the ball through the air on a consistent basis. Brendan asks, how is the offensive line handling the increased pace? Are they getting set quickly? Are there many procedural penalties? Does it seem like they have the endurance for long drives? I know that this was a huge issue in the spring. Not so much, well, I guess the procedural penalties were a bit of an issue, but it was the pace of things. The guys, after a drive, after 6 or 7 plays of boom, 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 were struggling to get off the field. And we know that because of what they had done previously. It was a huge change. I haven't seen them as fast-paced as we have seen prior to in spring ball. So it's a little bit different. I think they're going to kick it up here at some point, and we'll get to see. But I know that Tanner Bortolini, when we talked to him before fall camp started, he said that, yeah, they had to get adjusted to it. They felt like they kind of did towards the end of spring and certainly into summer, and trained like they knew that they were going to have to be part of the that it was going to be a huge thing, and they're going to be able to go through into the third quarter, fourth quarter, and be able to still be this fast-paced offense. I think another thing that plays into this, though, is the idea by Jack Bicknell, the offensive line coach, wanting to play more than 5 guys. Like, he wants to play potentially 7 or 8 guys. And if he's comfortable doing that, it's because, or I should say, if he does that, it'll help them deal with this pace issue and getting run down. And I think that they end up, I think they do have 7 or 8 guys that they could play and feel comfortable playing. And Jack Bicknell has done that in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. But I haven't seen too many procedural penalties. I know as soon as I say that, tomorrow it's going to be just a flag fest, but there also haven't been officials there. Greg Gillum, who is the chief of staff for Luke Fickell, he's the one that has the flags, and I haven't seen a ton of them come out, to be honest with you. But I think the officials, they'll have officials here at some point soon, and maybe we'll have a better idea of just how bad it is. And Bobby asks, can Will Pauling have an all Big Ten type of year from what you've seen in spring and the first couple of days? I'm on record as saying I think Will Pauling's going to lead the team in catches. I was really bad in my predictions last year, both on the camp and on Kenny and Heilprin. So that's probably not a good thing for Will. But I mean, you think about the Wisconsin wide receivers that have been all Big Ten. And like, what are we talking? We're talking about honorable mention all Big Ten. We're talking about, first or second team all Big Ten. There are so many talented wide receivers in this conference. It's going to be really hard for him to crack into that, especially with what Ohio State has going on. Certainly some of the other guys that the conference boasts. There's a lot of good ones, but I think Will Pauling has a chance to have a special season. I do, because I think the slot is a spot that we heard Phil Longo talk about it before fall camp, about how the only thing that he loves more than his kids and his wife is a slot receiver. So it's the easiest position to get the ball to in this offense, and they've got a unique skill set, and Will Pauling has that unique skill set. He's fast, he's quick, he can catch it, he's tough, and he's smart. And when you have all those things, you can really challenge a defense. And I think he's going to have it. The only thing that would hold me back from this is I think Skylar Bell is a hell of a player too. And so where exactly does his role fit in here in the slot? Because I think both those guys are going to play. How much they're going to play, how much they could play together. Maybe you're going 4 wide receiver sets and you've got 2 slot guys, right? So slot right, slot left, and it becomes even more dangerous for Wisconsin's offense. But Will Pauling, could he have an all Big Ten type of year? Yes. Does that mean he's going to be all Big Ten? Probably not, just because of some of the other guys that are sitting in here in this conference. All right, so that is going to do it for the questions about the team. There was also some questions about the Big Ten. I don't know if you guys heard, they made some moves this today, and that is likely adding Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten, which is now going to be at 18 teams. we change the name at all? I don't think you change the name. The name has too much history. There's no reason to change it. The Pac-12 changed their name from the Pac-10 to the Pac-12, and look at them now. It's all been downhill since then, right? All downhill since they changed the name to Pac-12. No, it's an interesting move, and it's a move that probably should have been seen. I know that Kevin Warren actually suggested that they also invite them when they invited USC and UCLA. I can't imagine UCLA and USC are overly happy with this, but it is what it is. Oregon and Washington are good additions. They're not going to be getting the full money that is going to be required. I think I saw 35, 40 million, and then it'll be at a point where by the time the next TV deal comes around, I think that is the plan. Maybe there's going to be some changes because I know that there were some people that weren't overly happy with Oregon being specifically overly happy with that money layout. And again, as I'm talking about this, it could be old news within 5 minutes. So take that for what it's worth. But it's a good addition. It's at 18 teams. I personally don't think you stop at 18. I think you get to 20. And then I think you split it up into 4 pods and you have 5-team pods. And we figured this out scheduling wise. And I don't know who those 2 other teams are. It's certainly, in my mind, it's certainly not Cal and Stanford. I think it's probably, maybe North Carolina and Virginia. You try and grab them from the ACC if and when you're able to break that through. And 20 probably isn't the end of it either. I know people are, and I'm kind of in the same vein. I wish it would just get to the end of it, but I have no problem talking about it. I know there are some people that don't even want to talk about it. My normal co-host, doesn't even want to talk about it because it's just, who cares? Just wake me up at the end of this, and that's fine. But I want it to happen as quickly as possible. So I'm going to talk about it, and it is happening very, very quickly. Wisconsin, they've gone from, 14. They've gone from what, 12 to 18, or even 11 to 18 in a little over 10 years, in 12 years, 13 years. That's pretty quick. And they've gone from 14 to 18 in 2 years. All right, not even 2 years, a year. So it is happening relatively quickly, and it's certainly not done. It's certainly not done. But some of the questions were, do you think the further conference expansion is going to have an impact on the upcoming home and home with Alabama? I don't, because I don't think the Big Ten is going to go to 10 games, a 10-game conference season with these other teams coming in. I don't think they are. So it's going to stay as a 9-game conference season, in which case you still have those 3 non-conference games. They're scheduled. I don't understand why you wouldn't play them. Now, the schedule itself, the Big Ten schedule itself, is going to change, obviously. They're coming in to the conference next year, Oregon and Washington, that is, and you're going to have UCLA and USC coming in, and they had those schedules. They released them less than 2 months ago, and we looked at it and we're like, holy crap, look at that 2024 schedule. Look at that road schedule that Wisconsin's got in 2024. Oh, my goodness. And then you look at their 2025 schedule and the home schedule. Oh, my goodness. So many great games in that 2025 schedule. It doesn't matter anymore. It's irrelevant at this point. They're going to have to revamp this, and they're going to have to go back to, they took a long time to come up with the Flex Protect schedule, right? So you had every other team, depending on who you have as a rival, you had a protected rival. Wisconsin, 2 protected rivals, Minnesota and Iowa. They play them every year, and then there was the system was set up so you'd be able to rotate through, and you'd be playing every other team at least once every other year. And they're going to have to change that up a little bit, right? They're going to have to change that model up a little bit. You're adding 2 more teams into it. I don't know if you have to change it significantly, but there's going to be a little bit of a change. But I do not think it's going to affect Alabama, the home and home with Alabama. That's next year and the year after. You're so close. You've been holding on to it for this long. I don't think if, adding USC and UCLA didn't affect it, I don't think adding Oregon and Washington is going to affect it either. So I think those games end up getting played, and I'm hopeful they do, because I can't wait to see Alabama in Madison. I can't wait to see Wisconsin down in Tuscaloosa. It could be a murder, but it's something I'm looking forward to, and I know fans are certainly looking forward to it as well. So Wisconsin has 2 more members in the Big Ten, Oregon, Washington. It's irrelevant for this year. But, man, 18 teams in the Big Ten. It's not going to be done. Got to be adding more, and we'll see exactly what it all looks like when it's all done. But I'm excited for it. Look, I understand. Like, I would be upset if I'm a Washington State fan, or if I'm an Oregon State fan, or if I'm a Cal fan, or I'm a Stanford fan, even though I don't think there's a ton of fans for either of those two schools. I'd be upset. But I don't cover them. I was never a fan of their teams. I don't really care. College football, people are going to complain about it right now, and then they're going to watch the games on Saturdays. That's all that matters. I don't think there's going to be anything that stops that from happening until they take the school names off the jerseys. People root for the names on the jerseys. They root for Wisconsin. They root for Michigan. They root for Ohio State. Yes, the players obviously matter, certainly matter, but players come and go. The teams stay, and that's what they're rooting for. And adding Oregon and Washington, I don't think is going to make people cheer less for Wisconsin or be less inclined to watch the games. At least that's my opinion. I don't know how anybody else feels. You're more than welcome to tell me I'm wrong. I'll accept that, but it is what it is. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. Jesse's going to join me to break down practice number 4 of spring. Until then, you've been listening to The Camp.